What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be going through our consensus top 12 tight end rankings over here at FSC for the upcoming fantasy football season and going over my general strategy when it comes to the tight end position in fantasy football. You guys would have already seen Corey break down our consensus top 12 quarterbacks, and I'll be doing so when it comes to the tight end position. If at any point you enjoy the content and are interested in watching more, leave a like down below. Comment FSC Grind, and subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 15,000 subscribers, just eclipsed about 13.5 thousand yesterday. So appreciate you guys a ton, but hopefully we can get to that 15,000 mark as soon as possible. But before we get into that strategy portion, as always, let's hit the intro. Okay, tight end strategy. Tight end strategy is pretty simple, in my opinion. I either want to invest in one of the top tight ends in those top two elite tiers, talking about the top 5 names we're going to mention today, or I want to punt my tight end spot until the double-digit rounds for the most part and lock down, maybe 2 upside candidates late, pairing a David Njoku with a Pat Freiermuth or, a Hunter Henry with a Pat Freiermuth, something like that, a combo of 2 of them, rather than, taking a mid-tier, second-tier tight end in the first 10 rounds or so. So that's usually my philosophy. The reason why, most of the time in home leagues, I do notice that the difference in cost between the last of the elites, and in most cases, you'll usually see Pitts, Andrews, and Kelce all be off the board. So usually the 5th of the top 5 is usually between Waller and Kittle. You'll usually see the difference between that selected player and the next selected tight end, in my opinion, simply does not represent the difference in ceiling between the players. And I don't think the tier difference is baked in enough versus the comparable wide receiver talent we can find at each of those board textures. So, for example, we're talking maybe a 5th round Waller versus a 7th round Dalton Schultz. I don't think that the difference between Schultz and Waller is comparable to the difference between the wide receiver talent. I would rather prefer the elite tight end at that spot. So that's a structural thing for me. Usually in home leagues, as I kind of mentioned, when the top 5 go, we do see a natural reaction for the rest of the room to, want to lock up their tight end. They want to make sure that roster spot is taken care of. They don't want to have to worry about it on a week-to-week basis. And we do see that mid-tier get pushed up in ADP as a result, trying to chase the upside of the guys that were selected in those top 5 respectively. And the reason, again, I'm mostly avoiding the 3rd tier. I mentioned the 1st tier, of course, is the top 2 guys. 2nd tier, still elite, is the next 3. The reason why I'm avoiding the 3rd tier at cost, unless they fall to the 8th round or later on, I'm fine with locking them up then. The reason why is that their draft cost, comparative, as I said, to the upside they bring in relation to the guys I'm getting in the double-digit rounds is really not that different. The difference in fantasy points per game last year between the tight end 1, Mark Andrews, and the tight end 8, Dallas Goedert, was the same difference as Dallas Goedert compared to Jonnu Smith in terms of points per game. About 6.6 points per game difference between Andrews and Goedert. That was about the same difference we saw between Goedert and Jonnu Smith. So a clear gap there between tight end 8 and tight end 35 being the same as tight end 1 and tight end 8. And a better relation to that is that the difference between tight end 4 in points per game last year, George Kittle, versus tight end 5, Dalton Schultz, was the same difference between Dalton Schultz at 5 and Hunter Henry at 13. So the gap is huge at the top in the tight end position. If you can secure an elite standout option that can genuinely make a difference, yes, they are scarce. They are hard to come by. But after about the first 7 or 8 tight ends, we do see it kind of plateau, kind of fall off, kind of flat off to a degree where ultimately here, your tight end 20 versus my tight end 8, it's not going to make much of a difference from a statistical basis. So in my opinion, you either want to target those guys with the elite 15 plus PPR point per game ceiling, or downright punt the position and hope, at opportunity cost, your round 12 guy that you picked up, maybe in David Njoku, can give you comparable points per game to, Cousin Joe's round 7 TJ Hockenson. But anyways, that's the strategy. Either go elite, invest heavy, or just downright punt the position. Obviously, of course, if you get some mid-tier guys that fall at value, you can consider them. But for the most part, if I miss out, I'm punting. Let's go to the rankings. The number 1 tight end at FSC that we do have is Travis Kelce, tight end from the Kansas City Chiefs. And he's somebody that I've really wrestled with all offseason in terms of either putting him at 1 or the guy that you're going to see at 2 being at 1. But in my opinion, the peripherals and continued dominance of Travis Kelce is just way too undeniable for me to not have him at number one. His lowest PPR point per game in the last 5 years has been 15.5 in 2017. And we saw in 2021 that peaked all the way at nearly 21 PPR points per game. He is the clear-cut number one weapon for Patrick Mahomes. And we talk a lot about how the Chiefs will try and overcome the loss of Tyreek Hill. The most plausible outcome for them to overcome the loss of a top 5 wide receiver has always been putting more emphasis on getting Travis Kelce involved in that game plan. I would be shocked this year if Travis Kelce isn't back to getting 145, 150 targets in that Chiefs offense. We know, due to the presence of Patrick Mahomes, this Chiefs offense will still be amongst the top 5 to 10 in the NFL. So trusting a weapon that can command 25% of the targets from the best quarterback in football is a very good bet to make, in my opinion. Obviously, the biggest risk that we've mentioned multiple times in the Dynasty offseason with Kelce is that due to his advanced age, maybe he could potentially see a fall off. But from a pure situational projection, we should expect Kelce to work as a top 2 tight end in fantasy yet again, something he has done every season since 2016. Travis Kelce, more than fine with taking this guy in the, mid-second round type of area. I can't stomach him on the 1-2 turn, given the running back upside, a guy like Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler in that range. But as soon as those upside running backs are gone, I'm fine with taking Travis Kelce over, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, that area of wide receiver. So mid-second seems appropriate because you can start your draft with an anchor running back or wide receiver round 1, get Travis Kelce, and still be able to wrap around in the mid-third with a guy like T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, or Keenan Allen in round 3. Tight end 2 on the FSC consensus rankings is going to be Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens, and his season in 2021 was downright dominant. A 26.6% target share, first in the NFL amongst the tight end position, and a 30% target rate, second, paced Andrews to a 17.7 PPR point per game average and an overall tight end 1 finish. The biggest question mark I have here with Andrews would be that overall potential decrease in overall passing volume we see for Baltimore. Last year, they were the 23rd team in neutral pass rate and had the 9th most pass attempts in the league. I do think due to the return of their running backs, obviously they're dinged up going to the year, so maybe early season Mark Andrews can dominate. But once J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are healthy, I do expect the Ravens to revert back to some of that run dominance we saw circa 2020 and before. So if that's the case, if we're not getting the raw volume of this Baltimore passing attack, I do think that Mark Andrews sees a relative downtick in comparison to, of course, the locked iron status of a guy like Travis Kelce. However, although I think the overall volume may go down, I still expect Andrews to maintain or potentially strengthen his target share that he saw last year. Last year, again, 26.6% target share. I'd be comfortable projecting him in that 27, 28% range, given the status beyond Rashad Bateman in that Baltimore Ravens passing attack. And again, with continuity, offensive insulation, and of course, that ability to command targets, all working in favor of Mark Andrews, I'd feel comfortable taking him in the back second area where I compare him with a guy like, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type of guy. Get, of course, Mark Andrews round 2 and still be able to get an early third caliber player, maybe a Leonard Fournette, to be able to pair with that structure. So for the Andrews versus Kelce debate, it's mostly comparing the value of, Mark Andrews' target share and touchdown scoring prowess to Kelce's insulated situation on what we should expect to be a top passing offense. Again, I slightly prefer Kelce, but they are clearly the top 2 tight ends going into fantasy football for 2022. Next up, the 3rd overall tight end in the consensus FSC rankings. We're going to be shifting to the Atlanta Falcons with second-year tight end Kyle Pitts, and his rookie season was flat-out dominant for a rookie tight end. 20.3% target share and the second-best seasonal rookie tight end output we have ever seen from a 21-year-old, 6'6", 245-pound mega athlete. That is exactly what Kyle Pitts is. I don't even feel comfortable talking about this guy as a human being because he is downright made of machine. Like, if you could just put a tight end in the lab and say, he's going to have these dimensions, he's going to have this wingspan, he's going to be able to jump at this ability, run this fast, Kyle Pitts would be the end result. He's just a genetic freak and arguably the most talented tight end in the NFL today. The problem with Kyle Pitts relative to the top 2 options is that stability of the Atlanta Falcons passing offense, obviously not being able to sniff what the Baltimore Ravens or Kansas City Chiefs can represent, given the talent that they have at quarterback. However, people are so critical about Pitts in his rookie season simply due to an unsustainably low touchdown rate. 1 touchdown on 110 targets for a player of his talent, size, and speed should not be the norm. So I expect that touchdown output to go up. But now we're getting to the fact that we could potentially see a 25% target share tight end. Yes, maybe a low passing volume offense, but 25% target share for a guy like Kyle Pitts with what he could do after the catch, with how efficient of a player he is. I think he's soon to be a 1,300, 1,400 plus yard tight end. So taking darts for when he eventually becomes that player and ultimately provides you maybe a 2020 Travis Kelce level advantage at the tight end spot is well worth the risk. Yes, there's a lot of negative peripherals going in the way of Kyle Pitts, but if he's going in that late 3rd, early 4th round area, once the tier 3 wide receivers are off the board, the AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Keenan Allen range, I'm more than fine starting my 11th overall pick with Adams, Barkley, and Kyle Pitts. I think that's a phenomenal start, and I do think that this year we could expect Kyle Pitts to put up 1,100, 1,200 yards, up that touchdown share, and eventually be a top 3 to 5 tight end in fantasy football, giving you a bang for your buck where you're taking him in drafts. The next tight end we have listed in the FSC consensus rankings is going to be tight end Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. And he's a player that's posted over a 23% target share in each of the last 3 years. Yes, adding Adams is going to increase the level of target competition for Darren Waller, but that has more of an impact on the tertiary wide receiver options than it does, in my opinion, the clear-cut number 2 weapon in the offense that Darren Waller represents. Obviously, the added benefits, in my opinion, are that the presence of Adams increases the prowess of the Raiders offense, and we can get Waller back to his 2020 output where he was a dominant tight end. He scored 9 touchdowns in that season, and he was ultimately one of the biggest advantages at the most scarce position in fantasy. With Waller, you're getting the exact peripherals conducive to fantasy production: ability to command targets, above average quarterback play, good projectable offense, with, again, that history of elite level tight end production in his favor. I expect a huge bounce back, and for Waller to reclaim that status amongst the elites of the tight end position. If he's going off the board in the 4th, 5th round type of era, I'm more than comfortable pulling the trigger on Waller, because I do think he gives you a sizable difference at that scarce position of tight end comparative to a lot of the guys we're going to mention in that tier 3, tier 4 area. Coming in at number 5, the final of the 5 tight ends we deem as being the ones with tight end 1 overall upside. We're going to shift gears to San Francisco and talk about George Kittle, tight end from the 49ers. And his bull case is pretty simple. He is the best real-life tight end in the NFL, and he's capable of potentially unmatched week winning ceiling games that we have seen in the past time and time again. He has ability to command targets, 24.9% target share this past year, and is clearly one of the most efficient tight ends in the entire NFL. The ability is clear and abundant, but the concerns that we have with Kittle are enough to move him to 5. He's missed 11 games in the last 2 seasons due to injury and is moving from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance. As bullish as I am on Trey Lance, you guys can see tons of more content on why we're so high on Trey Lance over here at FSC. It is a big change in terms of potential schematic look for a guy like George Kittle. There's a lot of uncertainty baked into how the transition in the offense is going to go from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance. So that adds a level of uncertainty that you don't have to deal with a guy like Darren Waller, for example, who has Derek Carr back in ready to roll. And obviously, of course, the big difference there too, the projected offensive passing volume difference between the Raiders and the 49ers will be night and day, in my opinion. Again, we saw this past season, 514 passing attempts from the San Francisco 49ers standpoint, 628 from the Las Vegas Raiders. So given that clear difference in overall passing volume, combined with how good I think the Raiders offense can be, is enough for me to leverage Darren Waller over George Kittle. But I think you can make the argument of George Kittle being all the way up to 3. I think those top 2 are pretty ironclad. This 3 to 5 area, pick and choose who you want to rank at 3, pick and choose who you want to rank at 5. I think they are very close relative to each other. Number 6 on this list is going to be tight end Dalton Schultz of my Dallas Cowboys. And this past year, obviously the breakout season for Dalton Schultz in 2021, boasted over a 16% target share and over 100 targets on a high-octane offense with the Dallas Cowboys. The bet on Schultz is plain and simple. You're betting on offensive insulation and ability to earn targets on what should be a top 5 to 10 passing output offense in the entire NFL in 2022. I don't think he has the elite ceiling that the top 5 do, given the fact that I don't think he is the level of talent that George Kittle, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, or Travis Kelce are. But I do think that he's someone that has, solid value. If he's going in round 7, round 8, round 9, I'm fine with taking the plunge on him there. It's just as soon as he sneaks into that round 5, round 6 type of area, point blank simple, I just don't think there's much of a discrepancy there in terms of where you're drafting them between Schultz and Waller. Although I do think that the ceiling is night and day between a guy like Darren Waller and Dalton Schultz. So for me personally, if he's going within a round of Darren Waller, I would just rather either pay up on Darren Waller or completely punt the position. But if he falls a couple rounds, I'm fine with getting Dalton Schultz. I think he's pretty much locked into around tight end 4 to tight end 8 in terms of his range of outcomes, as long as he's healthy this year going into 2022. Before we get into the 7th tight end on this list, Corey says it all the time, but we got to pay some bills. You guys should be hearing a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped. Hey lads, today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at Manscaped, the leaders in male grooming across the globe. With fantasy football drafts right around the corner, it's time to fix up your grooming routine. CeeDee Lamb is good, but have you seen these beautiful nuts? Get your snake looking right for your oncoming snake draft with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have created a championship lineup with their Performance Package 4.0. Inside their Performance Package 4.0, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag. Tom Brady didn't come out of retirement for you to have hairy balls. Spotted at quarterback, we have the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. This trimmer is here to guide you on a journey to trim your body, balls, and even your A-gap. The 4th generation trimmer also features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 also has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock, and is even waterproof. This Performance Package 4.0 doesn't just stop at the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. We also include the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, the Ultimate Flex. Watch it run through your ear and nose hairs like Derrick Henry coming through that A-gap. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps reduce nicks, snags, and tugs in those sensitive holes of yours. Don't forget to use the Crop Preserver ball deodorant and their Crop Reviver ball toner to help your little bench warmers be on their A game while feeling the sun's heat. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts in their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Who's the commissioner now? This summer, it's time to join 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Again, 20% off plus free shipping with the code BUSH at manscaped.com. Manscaped gives your manhood the proper treatment it deserves. We appreciate the support for the Fantasy Stock Exchange by our friends over at Manscaped and thank them for sponsoring today's video. And speaking of that video, let's get right back to it. Appreciate the support from Manscaped. Now let's get back to the tight end rankings. And number 7 on the FSE consensus top 12, we're going to be getting into Dallas Goedert, tight end from the Philadelphia Eagles. And he is, in my opinion, representing the tight end of the mid-tier that has the talent to be a tier 1 guy if things were to fall his way. As I kind of mentioned with Dalton Schultz, I don't think he has that level of talent. I do think that Dallas Goedert is the type of talent that can be regarded amongst the Darren Wallers, the Kyle Pittses, the George Kittles, Travis Kelce's, Mark Andrews' of the world. In fact, I think he's the most likely of this tier to eventually develop into that 2021 Mark Andrews archetype. And it's pretty simple to me. The big negative, of course, with Dallas Goedert and why he even falls here is in terms of target competition, especially if the Eagles maintain their run dominant play calling we saw week 7 on. But of course, the optimism for Goedert is that the offense as a whole does see an uptick with adding AJ Brown to this group. And with a year 3 jump from Jalen Hurts that we projected a ton on this channel, the ceiling that he's a top 2 to 3 target on a top 10 offense, something that a player of his efficiency could absolutely exploit into a top 3 to 5 finish at the position. And I mean, his efficiency these past few years has point blank been amongst the best of the best at the tight end position, a 2.34 yards per route run this past year, which would have ranked 4th at tight end. And he commanded a near 19% target share, 3% higher than Dalton Schultz did this past year, 19% target share in 2021. If he maintains this target share and the Eagles do throw the ball more, again, I kind of mentioned it, we could be in store for the new 2022 Mark Andrews this upcoming season with Dallas Goedert. Maybe a Walmart version, but I wouldn't be at all shocked if he's a 15-plus PPR point per game tight end and 100-plus targets and double-digit touchdowns being well within the range of outcomes when it comes to Dallas Goedert. So this mid-tier tight end, I'm most likely to deviate my strategy towards Dallas Goedert, given the type of archetype and the type of ceiling I do see present with Goedert. Not to mention, he's usually one of the cheaper of these mid-tier tight ends, going off the board round 8, round 9, usually when I do my drafts. I'm more than comfortable locking and loading Dallas Goedert as my main tight end one, with potential upside to be a top 4 round pick by this time next year. The number 8 tight end on the FSC ranking is going to be TJ Hockenson, tight end from the Detroit Lions, and he is basically Dalton Schultz minus the offensive insulation. He shouldn't earn targets on what should be a bad Lions team, subjecting him to potentially favorable game script, but he's not someone that actually provides you an edge at tight end. So as I kind of said before the show started, I would rather just punt him for a lower opportunity cost player with the same archetype, maybe a guy like David Njoku. I think Hockenson should be fine. I just do think that his ceiling is limited to where he goes around, and I have a hard time seeing a big difference between him and some of those double-digit tight end round lottery tickets. I think the range of outcomes from TJ Hockenson is probably like tight end 6 to tight end 12, and at this opportunity cost, going ahead of a guy like Dallas Goedert in most drafts, I would rather just punt the position all around or just wait around for a guy like Dallas Goedert. And the next guy we're about to talk about with number 9, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. And it's funny because I called TJ Hockenson, Dalton Schultz minus the offensive insulation. Well, Zach Ertz is kind of like the OG Dalton Schultz, if you will, where, point blank, other than Dallas Goedert, this tier 2 is just the Dalton Schultz tier. We're getting a bunch of Dalton Schultzes. Ertz has never been that hyper athletic player that's going to wow you on the field. But the one thing he does consistently well, despite his landing spot, is command targets. He was a tight end 5 in PPR points per game once he joined the Cardinals in week 7, and he earned 5 or more targets in 10 of the 12 games with 5 games of 9+ targets. With them rewarding Ertz with his extension, Kyler hopefully maintaining health throughout the year, and of course the elephant in the room that DeAndre Hopkins is missing those first 6 games due to suspension. It wouldn't shock me at all if we're talking about Ertz as a potential top 5 tight end to start the year in those first 6 games, and he might even be there might even be a situation where week 6 comes along, Zach Ertz is the tight end 4, Darren Waller is the tight end 10. And you could potentially shift, Zach Ertz share into a Darren Waller share if, of course, you're in a more home casual league. People don't really look at the usage. They just look at the bottom line. If Ertz gets off to a solid start, I do think he's a piece that you can project for more value around week 4, week 5, week 6, once players in your league are looking at the overall production the player has already provided you rather than projecting forward. So with Zach Ertz, he is the classic guy that I think will outperform his ADP early. And he's one of these mid-tier tight ends that I'm most likely to take because he is by far the cheapest of this group. Usually you can get Zach Ertz round 9, round 10 as your tight end 1. I am more than fine with that opportunity cost on a guy that I think has legitimate top 5 upside to start the season with Hopkins on the mend. Shifting off Zach Ertz, let's get to number 10 of our consensus rankings. That's going to be Dawson Knox, tight end from the Buffalo Bills. And it's a pretty simple case for Knox. He's an efficient player in 2021, attached to one of the best offenses in the league, with freaking Josh Allen slinging him the rock. And I don't like to bring up narratives, but we mentioned, the lunch buddy narrative last year, the breakfast buddy narrative last year with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Apparently Dawson Knox and Josh Allen are best friends. So if he does have a breakout year, we can point to the fact that he does spend a lot of time with Josh Allen, spend a lot of time with his quarterback. But enough of the joke narrative. Let's get into what makes Dawson Knox our 10th overall tight end. The cons of him is that his target share simply needs to improve for him to reach an elite ceiling. I do think, though, with the overall ambiguity amongst this receiving pecking order for the Buffalo Bills going into the season, combined with elite touchdown scoring prowess that we saw last year, makes Knox a very interesting target. If Knox can command, closer to that 16, 17% area in target share, rather than the 13% commanded last year, we see an opportunity and an offense that will throw the ball over 650 times this upcoming year for Knox to not only replicate his top 8 finish, but to potentially crack that top 6, top 5 type of area, especially with how good we think this Buffalo Bills offense will be. So Dawson Knox, if I can get him in the double-digit rounds, I'm more than fine with taking the flyer on him rather than, spending a 6th round pick on a guy like Dalton Schultz. Number 11 on our list is going to be Pat Freiermuth, tight end from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's pretty simple to make a case for Pat Freiermuth. He's a young, ascending player. He showed promise down the stretch last year. And of course, in those last 10 games where he broke out post-bye week, he was able to separate from Eric Ebron. He commanded 49 targets and had 6 touchdowns in those last 10 games. It's very rare to see early production from the tight end position, but I do think from a pure comparison standpoint, I feel like he can be a better version of what we saw from Hunter Henry when he was a fantasy football contributor on the Chargers, where he's going to get, good but not elite volume with plenty of scoring opportunity. I see that in the range of outcomes for Pat Freiermuth, especially if we do see, maybe Kenny Pickett emerge or Mitch Trubisky play about average football for the Steelers. I think Freiermuth has a very good opportunity to blossom and build off the role that we saw from him in year 1. The final tight end on our list is going to be Cole Kmet, tight end from the Chicago Bears. And it's pretty simple. He's, not a player that has an elite ceiling, but somebody that's probably got a safe floor for the most part. His bull case is that he's an 18% target share sophomore tight end, and he can develop into a 20+% target share guy with an opportunity to be the number 2 target on that Chicago Bears offense. He has limitations in terms of his ability to work down the field, but I think he should be a safe projection for tight end 1 level volume. And he is due for a regression uptick on the 1 touchdown he scored this past season. I would say his range of outcomes is probably somewhere between tight end 8 and tight end 14 if he plays a full 17-game season. So at tight end 12 opportunity cost, I don't mind him in that round 12 area. Again, I'm not ecstatic over taking a guy like Cole Kmet because I don't think the ceiling is quite high, but I do think if you punted the position and you just need somebody that can get you by, Cole Kmet in round 12 is much more satisfying to me than spending a round 7 pick on TJ Hockenson. The honorable mentions for us on FSC and guys that were super close in our rankings to crack in this top 12, I'll just kind of mention them in terms of honorable mentions. Number 13 is Hunter Henry, and the bull case is pretty simple for him. Second year of continuity with Mac Jones. He is going to potentially see an increased passing rate for New England this season, given the additions that they've added to this passing offense. Not to mention, of course, if Mac blossoms into, a Kirk Cousins level player, then Hunter Henry is going to have plenty of touchdown opportunity on what should be an above average offense for the New England Patriots. All depends on the development of Mac Jones, because Hunter Henry's not going to win there on raw volume. But if this offense is efficient, if they're able to put up points, if they're able to get into red zone positions, we have seen the ceiling of being able to score touchdowns from Hunter Henry, not only last year, but in the past. So getting him in the tight end 13, double-digit round area, I'm more than fine with taking the swing on a potential improvement from a very promising rookie season from Mac Jones. Number 14 for us is going to be David Njoku, tight end from the Cleveland Browns. And he is easily my favorite late round tight end. I'm going to break this down fully in depth. Don't you worry on our sleepers video, but it's pretty simple. He's got athleticism. He's shown a top 10 ceiling in the past. And now he is the main tight end again after the departure of Austin Hooper. And we'll get into some of the usage things, but let's just point out the fact that in the preseason, he had an 80% route participation with the first team offense for Jacoby Brissett. So if I'm going to take a pure home run upside swing in the double-digit rounds to be, potentially not only an average tight end 1, but potentially an above average, a league winning tight end 1, I do think that given his athleticism, given his pecking order in the offense, David Njoku is a very good opportunity to be that guy that emerges at the tight end position this year. The final honorable mention I want to make reference to is Irv Smith Jr., tight end from the Minnesota Vikings. He is another tight end I don't mind mixing in with late dart throws. 11 personnel, of course, with the expectation under Kevin O'Connell there in Minnesota. And Irv, of course, as you guys know, we hyped him up going into last year. He did miss all of last year with injury, but the departed Tyler Conklin actually commanded 87 targets on this team this past year. I do think that with Irv Smith, you're getting a superior player on a team that should increase their pass volume and pace. I wouldn't be shocked if Irv Smith was able to command near the 100 target type of area if he's able to stay healthy. Again, a lot of assumption. He still has to prove it, but given his athletic ability, he's at least an intriguing option, especially on what I project to be one of the better offenses in the NFL with the Minnesota Vikings. But either way, talked about 15 tight ends. If you guys enjoyed and want access to our full rankings, you can acquire them one of 2 ways. Promo code FSC on Underdog Fantasy will match back your first deposit up to $100 on their platform, as well as give you access to both our Dynasty and Redraft rankings manifestos. The other way to obtain our rankings is by signing up in the Ladster or Tone Setter tier over on Patreon, getting you access to our rankings and many more listed resources to get you ready and tuned up for the fantasy football season. But either way, if you guys made it this far, appreciate you guys. enjoy your week. We're going to be coming at you with superlatives week coming up. So you guys want to stay tuned to the channel. And if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed for the fun week of content. But signing off. Peace out, y'all.